Good morning, afternoon, good day, hello, YouTube, and welcome to the fucking news with White Van Man on the 2nd of September 2020. Cheers. Today's newspaper is the Scottish edition of the Times, and as usual with Scottish editions, it's got quite a lot of pish about Scotland in it. But today, actually, some of the news from Scotland is quite relevant, so shall we press on? First of all, the headline reads, "Restrictions hit Glasgow region after COVID surge. Mohammed gone home. Gone aim. Good morning." I think that headline, "Restrictions hit Glasgow region after COVID surge," ought to read, "Oppression in Glasgow after SNP hypochondria." Fizz, fizz, fizz. Good morning. Hundreds of thousands of Scots have returned to severe oppression, under which indoor visits to or by family and friends are banned because of a sustained rise in hypochondria by the SNP government. A sustained rise in paranoid, fearful, oppressive, repressive lawmaking and fascism. That's not what the paper says. That's what I'm saying. 800,000 residents of Glasgow have been prohibited from having guests for at least a fortnight. Well, there goes the dinner party, darling, in Govan, doesn't it? Scotland's second regional lockdown comes after it emerged that 66 cases were reported in the region. Wow, 66 cases. Cases, eh? Announcing the measures, Nicola Sturgeon said she would consider going further. Good morning, Rob. Going further than oppression, fascist restriction of your liberty, locking you up in your home. It gets worse. If these numbers continue, or, and this is the fear, very real fear. Fear is indeed very real. If these numbers continue and to rise further, then more people will fall ill from COVID-19 and more people will enter hospital and intensive care. Lynn Skywatch, there's no such thing as a chemtrail as you imagine it, by the way. My van's a chemtrail, just so you know. If these numbers continue and rise further, more people will fall ill from COVID-19 and more people will enter hospital and intensive care. There's no mention of anyone dying there. Like, we're locking people up in their home so that nobody goes to hospital. Don't we pay for the NHS to look after people who get sick? Now we have to stop people getting sick by being locked up. It gets worse. On page 2. Oh yes, transmission appears to be mainly happening inside people's homes and between households rather than in pubs and restaurants. Okay, but there's nobody dead. There is nobody dead in Scotland. Really, cases are up in Glasgow, so 800,000 people are locked in their homes. However, they're not actually locked in their homes. They're calling it lockdown restrictions, but they're not locked in their homes. And this is the bizarre part. You're not allowed visitors in your home. You're not allowed guests in your home. You're not allowed to visit people in the home. However, all of the pubs and restaurants across Glasgow are open. So if you want to... Just bear with me a second. So, if you want to catch coronavirus, you can just go to a pub. That easy. There you go. No need for you to worry. You can get coronavirus somewhere. And if you get ill, you can go to a hospital. And if you get really ill, you can go to intensive care. But the chances of you dying in Scotland, based upon the statistics from the last, say, 2 months, are infinitesimally small. Really, they are. Anyway, moving on. Here's another headline I like. foreign aid billions to be spent on British spies. This is a story about how money that Britain's been spending on overseas aid, you know, to help people in Botswana get toilets, allegedly, is to be diverted by Rishi Sunak away from that to enhanced cyber weapons and AI-enabled drones. Okay, so let's just change that headline around from foreign aid billions to be spent on British spies to bribery money to be spent on spying on Britons, because that's what's happening. Foreign defence and security policy has concluded that the money spent bribing overseas officials to be on our side would be better spent on cyber weapons and AI drones to catch migrants. And by cyber weapons, they mean more surveillance on you. Tapping your phone, following your phone, tracking and tracing your phone. So no need to bribe foreign regimes anymore. We just need more money for spying on you, because you are potentially the threat. And I mentioned Scotland at the beginning there about Scottish news, because Labour MSPs demand Leonard's departure. This is a story about the leader of the Labour Party in Scotland, who has presided over a, even for Scottish Labour, a huge fall in popularity, if you like, or at least polling figures. Richard Leonard, the under-fire Scottish Labour leader, is facing rebellion. And Labour MSPs are asking him to resign after his support in Scotland went from 23% support for Labour at 23% and 25% in the list. We have a proportional representation system, dropped by 10 and 11 points respectively, putting the Scottish Party, I think, 6th. I don't know where they are. They're certainly not first, second or third anymore. The Liberals could give Labour a run for their money in Scotland. Richard Leonard, if nobody is familiar with Richard Leonard, let me paint you a picture of a grey, older man with the personality of wallpaper paste, with a strong, thick Yorkshire accent. Okay, that's Richard Leonard. Now imagine him trying to lead a political party in Scotland. I know, in Scotland, a place where support for nationalism and independence is now 55%. 55% support for independence, and the SNP have won every election for the last 15 years. All right, hello, I'm Richard Leonard, people of Scotland. I've come to lead you to victory in the forthcoming council elections. Good luck with that. Sturgeon vows to set out second referendum plans in 6 months. More. And again, for people not familiar with it, Scotland had a referendum on independence. I voted yes, because I'm annoying. I like to do whatever people don't want done. But now that independence, now that support for independence is at 55%, I'll be voting no. I'll be voting no for a number of reasons. First of all, Nicola Sturgeon's a fascist little busybody twat who is fucking up my life. That's reason number one. And reason number two is she wants to take us back into Europe. Well, I voted to leave Europe for very good reasons. I don't like government. I really don't. One of the things I liked about Scottish independence was if we had to, we could get an angry mob with flaming torches and pitchforks could march to the Scottish Parliament and string the government up from a lamppost, because they were quite local. London's just too far to go. I'm a lazy angry mob. And so I certainly don't want to have to march to Strasbourg with my torch. My torch will have gone out by then, and my pitchfork will get quite heavy if I have to march to Strasbourg to string the government up from a lamppost. So no to Nicola Sturgeon's referendum on Scotland and being in Europe as a result. No thank you. Oh, now, Harry Maguire, the world's most expensive football defender, and a former player of England and currently playing for Manchester United. He was arrested recently in Greece in a fracas in a pub involving his sister, Ninhursag, good morning. A fracas involving his sister being injected with a date rape drug by Albanians. I know, it sounds like James Bond, doesn't it? It gets better. He's lodged an appeal, which has been successful, and he's due for a retrial. But before the retrial has occurred, the Greek police have released a statement. The Greek police have released a statement saying that Harry Maguire shouted, "Fuck the Greek police and fuck the Greek civilization," in their claim that he knew very well that they were Greek police and not undercover. His claim is because they were in plain clothes, he thought he was being kidnapped, and that's why he fought. So they're saying, no, he knew very well we were the police. He was shouting, "Fuck the police," and he also shouted, "Fuck the Greek civilization." I find it hard to imagine that Manchester United's top defender is familiar with Greek civilization enough to have an opinion about them. Although now that they've opened the box, I perhaps wonder if he wasn't muttering "fuck the plebiscite" and the Socratic method as well. We can only wonder what kind of issues Harry Maguire has with the birthplace of civilization, the emergence of science and democracy as a footballer. Substance abuse, fatalities, just skip that word fatalities. Substance abuse up by a third in lockdown. Well, if fatalities were up by a third, you can bet substance abuse was up by 2/3 or 300%. Who knows? I know I hit the crack pipe a lot harder during lockdown. I really did. Smoke it, snort it, shoot it up, and get peshed. So what do they want? What do they want? We're going to lock you up for 4 months. Behave yourself. Don't put on any weight or hit the crack pipe. Just sit there doing exercises to keep yourself fit for the day that you can return to productive work at McDonald's, shoving burgers down the throats of a grateful population. Well, what did they expect people to do for 4 months? Oh, buy a Peloton and take up Pilates. Or perhaps, like Harry Maguire, we should have been studying the Greek classics so we could shout more informed insults at the plainclothes officers arresting us in the pub. Waiting list deaths double as hospitals prioritise COVID-19. This is a story about how people who were waiting for operations on the NHS died while they were waiting because they shut down hospitals in expectation of a massive surge of coronavirus patients, which never happened. It never happened. Hospitals were not overwhelmed. The emergency hospitals that were built in Britain were never used. Never used. I repeat, there was no surge. The NHS was not overwhelmed. Hospitals were not full of anybody. They kept all the people waiting for treatment at home, locked up, doing crack and eating crispy pancakes from their toaster, where they died in large numbers waiting on operations and medical treatment they should have been having. So I think that headline, instead of reading "waiting list deaths double as hospitals prioritise coronavirus," should lead "hospitals prioritise death as people were waiting to get coronavirus." Because as the previous story about Scotland mentioned, most people caught coronavirus in either the care home or their own home. Not that anybody's dying from it. And there was a story yesterday or the other day about how a billionaire was saying, oh, we should definitely not raise corporation tax. We should certainly not raise, Sleepy Shoegazer, good morning. We should certainly not raise corporation tax to pay for the bailout. And so here's the reprise to this that news story. Call to raise taxes on everyone to heal the economy. I shit you not. I shit you not. Pay for your oppression. Pay for your own oppression. Pay the jailer that had you locked up. Bail out Richard Branson so he can go to the Virgin Airlines and other Virgin businesses. Bail out Richard Branson so he can sit on a private island twiddling with his jet ski, so that you can pay for the damage done to your health, your life, your freedom, and the economy that you survive on. You can pay for that. Taxes for you. Raise taxes on everyone to heal the economy, says Paul Johnson, director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Increased rates of income tax, that's me, innit? White van man, that's me, innit? A taxing me. National insurance, that's me, they're taxing me, the white van man. My national insurance. And VAT, that's me, isn't it? I pay VAT. Equivalent to about 40 billion. 40 billion, I mean, that's not even the whole bill. The debt for this country, Britain, has gone up by at least 2 trillion. So I believe that figure is per annum. Per annum, 40 billion extra taxes so that you can pay your jailer for the privilege of having had your economy shat on and yourself locked up with a burger for 4 months. French baffled by mask rules. French bureaucrats were accused of smothering business in red tape after publishing an impenetrable, convoluted guide to the wearing of masks in the workplace. Cases are on the rise in France. The French government has said that all workers must wear masks. Except there's a 21-page document about all of the exceptions, all right? So these people are exempt in France from wearing a mask. This is not an exhaustive list, this is just a few examples. Opera singers. La, 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 la. Yes, opera singers should be exempt. Conference speakers. Well, I don't know, I think you could slip a microphone in there. In a conference speaker. Photo agency models and news presenters are among other professions likely to be allowed to go barefaced, including liars. That's right, barefaced liars are allowed to not wear a mask. You heard it here first. Monkey shortage could delay development of coronavirus jab. You couldn't make this shit up. A shortage of monkeys in the United States. Really? I find that hard to believe. I thought there were plenty of monkeys and donkeys and sheep and other bovine animals in America. A shortage of monkeys in the United States will delay efforts to develop a vaccine, American researchers have warned. There is a big shortage. Koan Van Rompuy of the California National Primate Research Center says, "We can't find any rhesus any longer. They've completely disappeared." That doesn't sound like a shortage. It sounds like you've lost your monkeys. After the pandemic began, China halted monkey export. Oh dear. Really, just use sheep, donkeys, or, hey, I've got an idea. What about using people? Oh! Some researchers have suggested speeding up the process by moving straight to trials on humans. Oh, really? We've got some stuff here. We haven't tested it yet. We're thinking of testing it on you. Yeah. Even trickier is the question of how the vaccine might be tested on children. That is a tricky one, because you wouldn't be testing it on my children. That's for fucking sure. Whose children are you going to test it on? Who will volunteer their children to be injected with an untested medical goo? Hands up. Anyone? Oh, mission control. I've got to show you this picture. Dominic Cummings returned to work to take command of a new NASA-style mission control center at the heart of Whitehall. This is a new control center for government, right? And Dominic Cummings will be somewhat in charge of it. I think you can see that there. That's sort of NASA control center for British government. That's where, as the graphic suggests, they're going to track coronavirus cases and public disquiet. justice, education, defence, transport. TV screens and projectors beaming live data on coronavirus numbers. But I thought we were going to get rid of coronavirus. This reads like if you were somewhat interested in the jingle-jangle neuro-linguistic hypnosis that's taking place. TV screens, projectors on the walls beaming live data on the coronavirus numbers sounds like there's going to be coronavirus well into the future. Like we need a NASA-style control center for the government to operate its oppression over us in regard to coronavirus numbers, which will be beamed into your eyeballs, beamed into your ears, on the news, in the media all the time. Oh, coronavirus cases. Oh, quarantine because 3 people in Namibia had it, so now you can't fly to Africa. Fuck. How do you do in the COVID etiquette? This is a small story about the upper classes' view of what's in and out, what's de rigueur and passé as far as coronavirus etiquette goes. And the upper classes of Britain, now I don't know how you feel about rich people. I think if you work hard and you're desperate, you can become rich. I really do. However, the upper class of Britain didn't do that. They just inherited Wales. That's the way it works in Britain. We have a class of people who simply, generation after generation, inherit vast land holdings and wealth and go to the very best schools and eat the very best food, which they don't want to have plastic in anymore, by the way, which is why you're going away. And so the new rules for the upper class, what's in and what's out for the upper class. Okay, what's in? Live-in staff. Well, you know, I was just saying to my butler the other day, you should just move in. It's so tricky, what with the coronavirus rules, you having to, you know, your commute is such a bother these days, what with wearing a mask on public transport. I'm just going to have my staff move in. I don't know about you, but definitely the cook anyway. A chest freezer, because shopping has become so difficult, hasn't it? What with the queues and the mask wearing, and it's hard to get a slot at Ocado to deliver my Waitrose yummies. Pictures of your children volunteering. You know, I wouldn't want the hoi polloi, the unwashed masses to think that my children weren't doing their bit. So I have pictures of my children volunteering at the old folks home or the down and out shelter. Having a driver is in. Well, you know, you can't trust Uber these days. I used to Uber, but now, you know, I just don't trust Uber. Zoom calling your therapist. Because you need a therapist, because you're so incredibly wealthy. It's such a bother. Separate bedrooms. Oh, who for? I mean, we've got separate bedrooms, my children and I. Is this separate bedrooms for you and your wife and or husband? That would be great. What kind of a house do you live in? Dressing for dinner. I mean, the other day, my wife and I were sitting naked having our dinner, and I suggested, perhaps we should dress for dinner, darling. Do you not think? Owning a bike. This is in for the upper classes. So until recently, they didn't own bikes. Holidaying in Britain, ensuite bathrooms, having a pen pal, paying for a new hospital wing. That won't be used because either the people are locked up and can't get there to use it, so they're going to die from having a gammy leg anyway, or they haven't got serious enough symptoms from coronavirus to request it. And finally, what's in for the upper class is knowing someone who is working on a vaccine. And what's out, if you're interested, is kissing, crowded drinks parties, a dirty kitchen. When was that in? Hugging your parents, borrowing lipstick, being late for a reservation, tapas, festivals in your gardens, bare feet and homemade masks. Homemade masks, darling, they're not in, and one shouldn't do it. 1,500 migrants cross the channel in a month. That's a lovely picture. 1,500 migrants cross the channel every month. I have bad news for Daily Mail readers or people who are getting in a froth about migrants. The migrants crossing the channel are a tiny, tiny nano fraction of migrants who land in aeroplanes legitimately from all around the world. I believe the figure is somewhere between 180 and 280,000 migrants a year come to Britain from countries legally, legitimately, such as India. All of our post-colonial countries, quite a lot of African countries are post-colonial. Zimbabwe, although we've stopped because of the fascism of Managua, we've stopped people coming from there. So these people crossing the channel, honestly, they are, if you like, the least of our problems. If you're worried about migration, I suggest you get down to the airport and watch the thousands of people disembarking every day from India, Pakistan, and Botswana. I made that one up. There's a new boss for the BBC, and he pledges to curb left-wing bias in comedy shows. This is a view amongst some people in Britain that the BBC has pandered to a kind of woke pish brigade for years, and that comedy on the BBC constitutes laughing at people who aren't woke enough, and representing that it's a kind of white silence is violence culture, which I thoroughly agree with. The BBC's comedy output is not funny. However, the new BBC Director General is unlikely to change much. They just don't have the money. US airbase staff given immunity from prosecution in war on terror. 200 American civilian and technical staff on a military base in the UK were given diplomatic immunity for activities linked to the war on terror, it has been revealed, raising more questions about British involvement in rendition and torture. Documents just released show that in 2006, ministers extended the immunity of personnel at RAF Croughton in Northamptonshire, a communications station, after being told of demands by the global war on terrorism and the war on Iraq. The UK is known to have facilitated US extraordinary rendition, which is a couple of nice words for kidnap. The UK facilitated kidnap by America. America went around the world just plucking people up from the desert wherever they wanted, took them back to Guantanamo and tortured them into confessing to shit they did or did not do. You can't trust confessions made under duress. Anybody who thinks that torturing people into telling you stuff is a good idea is a fucking balloon. So all of these people were given diplomatic immunity so that they couldn't be prosecuted in retrospect for having taken part in the kidnap and torture of people from all over the world. Nice. This is civilization and the free world, protecting people who kidnapped and tortured other people for no reason without due process from prosecution. Nice. Da 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 da. God save the Queen and such. Jolly good. And more Scottish news that's actually interesting. More Scottish news that's actually interesting. There's a hate crime bill coming in Scotland, and it proposes to remove the need for intent in a criminal case where you are accused of stirring up hatred. That is to say that you can be accused of stirring up hatred no matter what your words were, if the other person feels that hatred was stirred up. That is to say, you can't claim in defense, that wasn't my intention, that was never my intention, and if you look at the words I've used, there is no intention in the words to stir up hatred. And that means that almost anybody could be arrested for saying almost anything. If another person says, I feel hatred was stirred up, no intention is required. And the police, amongst others, including the Catholic Church, are complaining about this because it's almost impossible to preach religion without trying to make people not like something else. So, hate crime bill, badly written, police say. Actually, they don't. I made that up. The headline says, cost of the hate crime bill is underestimated. The police are complaining that actually to have their police impose these laws on people, which is what happens when a law is passed, that they will need much greater training. Otherwise, people won't know what the law is. All right. I mean, that was mostly British and Scottish pish. You know, so it's good to come to the centre pages and get to some American pish. All right? Because this is the American pish, right? This is Donald Trump has visited Kenosha, which was left in ruins after riots in recent days. President Trump did not attempt to contact the family of Jacob Blake, but he did address the 17-year-old gun nut roaming the street with a rifle, saying that Mr. Trump suggested the teenager who travelled 20 miles with a gun to protect himself, and thereupon killed two people, that he had acted in self-defense and that otherwise he would probably have been killed while he stalked people with his gun on the streets 20 miles from his home. He wouldn't have been killed if he'd stayed at home, though. Just to be clear, if the gun nut had not taken his gun out of his cupboard, driven 20 miles to a riot to look for people to shoot, he wouldn't have come to any harm. I think we could all agree upon that. So, yeah. Donald Trump vowed to help rebuild the riot-torn city of Kenosha yesterday. He toured burnt buildings as a unifying gesture. He said, "We are all in this together," before flying back to Florida to his giant golden mansion to have a lobster and look at old pictures of Melania's butt. We're all in this together. The president told Laura Ingraham of Fox News, "Police can do 10,000 great acts, which is what they do, and one bad apple or a choker, you know, they choke." Like in a golf tournament, they just miss a 3-foot putt as they shoot the guy in the back 7 times. It's just a momentary lapse of aim. What they really meant to do was sink a 3-foot putt. The interviewer cut in, "You're not comparing this to golf, are you?" Yes, he is. Okay, there's Donald Trump there. Trump is here to heal the city scarred by protests, and he's going to do that by staring at it. Right? There's Donald Trump staring at the ruins. That's how he's going to heal it. He's going to give it a good hard look. I should say, however, Donald Trump is up in the polls. Not all of them. He's not up in all the polls, but Donald Trump is up in some polls. And one of the reasons might be that Joe Biden is a zombie. He really is. He's the walking dead. I wouldn't let him tie my shoelaces. I would suggest the American people get video surveillance footage to make sure that he's actually tying his own shoelaces, because the man is walking dead. And here's a quote from Joe Biden. All right. The election's underway. Joe Biden's barely seen in public ever, because he can only actually speak for about 30 minutes after he's been infused with athlete blood in the deep freeze where he lives. So they wheel him out. And yeah, here it is. Mr. Biden delivered a speech which was verbally muddled. I'm going to quote exactly what Joe Biden says. He mumbles, "COVID has taken this year, just since the outbreak, has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's the lives. It's just when you think about it." Anybody make any sense of that? The man is drooling. The man is drooling. He is a drooling quasi-octogenarian who, you know, would have trouble making a bowl of porridge and getting it to his mouth. I swear. Donald Trump is going to win perhaps by default, since the Democrats appear to have selected the equivalent of, I mean, they would have been better with a tramp off the street on drinking Drano. Joe Biden, a man who can hardly speak or articulate a policy in public. Really? And the French president says to the people of Lebanon, you have to reform or we'll cancel the bailout. Because the French are actually running Lebanon. So what kind of reform to democracy is the bailout man talking about there? You have to reform your government so that me and my money can choose your government. Otherwise, me and my money won't choose your government. Is anybody else seeing through the lines there? And finally, stop threatening us. Europe warns China. Which is interesting, isn't it? Because China does have a lot of clout, soft power they call it, and they use it in various ways. I think that headline should read, stop infecting us! Europe warns China. Because what's disappeared, what's not in this paper, and what's not in any paper, while we all suffer the oppression and tyranny of this pish about coronavirus, what's not in any paper or any news media or any mainstream and even under the mainstream is a sustained desire and investigation of the laboratory in Wuhan where this stuff came from. Where is it? If this were a fire in a big block of flats, the police would be poring over the cause, looking for that hot plug, looking for the exploded fridge or tumble dryer that caused this conflagration. Where is the sustained, purposeful, forensic investigation of the cause of this virus? There are no bats in Wuhan. There were no bats in a wet market in Wuhan. There were no pangolins in a wet market in Wuhan. The people of Wuhan do not eat bats. Wuhan is the equivalent of Silicon Valley in America. It's high tech, man. They make lasers and high quality optics. They design software. This is a 21st century city full of, people eating sushi and chicken, not bats. People in Wuhan not eating bats, not eating pangolins. So where, on our behalf, from our journalists and alleged purveyors of truth, is the story? Where's the story? Where's the paperwork? How about we see the paperwork from Wuhan, just so we can clear up these quizzling questions that have arisen that say, maybe you might have had a virus in your laboratory that we have. Can we have a look through your papers? No, we can't. And yet, people everywhere, I assure you, it's public knowledge that this laboratory was working on gain-of-function research to turn coronaviruses in bats into viruses that could infect humans. They published 2 or 3 years ago notes that that's what they were doing. They were widely criticized by academia around the world. Don't do that, said academics working in other labs around the world. Other virologists said, don't do that. That's a dangerous thing to do. And now what do we have? We have a virus that used to live in bats, infecting humans, for which we are being locked up, our economies are being trashed, our freedoms are being thrown away. Where's the investigation? Where's the concern? Where's the outcry? Answers on a postcard, please, to Who Gives a Fucks. Who gives a fuck? And here's the weather. It's a lovely day in Inverness. Okay, well, it's good enough for busking, and that's what I'm going to do. I might stream some of it, so you never know. You might see me later. Have a great day. I know I'm gonna. See you later.